Welcome to the Why Not podcast with me, Chrissy Hawkins. In a world where everybody asks you why, I'm here to ask why not. So sit back and relax or walk and listen and join me on this journey as we try to answer this never-ending question: what makes people say, why not? Hello, welcome back everyone. I have a guest for you for the first time in a while and I'm really excited to bring you this episode. So I have Aaron Cork here from Ride Strong Coaching and First Hurdle. She is a mindset coach. She specialises with equestrians, but if you're not a horse rider, do not worry. You will still find, I think, it's very interesting. And I think some of the things she talks about can actually transfer over as well into kind of across all industries or even just how you may feel yourself. So I hope you really enjoyed this episode. It was a great conversation and I found it really, really interesting. So let me know how you find it yourself when you listen to it. Hi guys, welcome back to Why Not. So I have a guest for you today and I'm very excited to bring her to you. Her name is Aaron Cork. She is the owner of Ride Strong Coaching and most recently First Hurdle. And I'm going to let her explain all about that herself, because I think it's always better coming from the person it comes from. So welcome to the podcast, Aaron. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on. So can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So as you said, my name's Aaron. I live in Gloucester in England. I, as you mentioned, have got a business called Ride Strong Coaching, which is a mindset coaching business, which has been running for a couple of years. Just aimed at helping horse riders, mostly female, to be honest, become more confident to deal with any mindset problems that they're having, so that they can start to enjoy their horses again.
Yeah, I love that. That's brilliant. So where did the idea for this come from in the first place?
Difficult to say, really. I myself had some really bad mental health problems back in 2020. A lot of personal problems. I also lost my horse at the same time, which was really difficult. I went through a really, really rough time, and I got help from a great counsellor. Like, she really, really helped me. And it was after that, really. I mean, the counsellor helped me so much that I decided that I wanted to be able to help other people too. And obviously, having had horses for my whole life, I wanted to be able to do it for horsey people because that's what I know. When I was speaking to my counsellor, she, as I said, she helped me a lot. But when I was talking to her about things to do with my horse, she didn't really understand.
Yeah.
And she couldn't really help me with those bits. And I was kind of thinking to myself, well, you know, if I had been going through mental health problems which were just caused by my horse or a situation around my horse, I wouldn't have been able to speak to that counsellor about it. So I decided to just try and be someone there for people with horses, because obviously horses are a very emotionally draining part of our lives sometimes.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we love our horses so much, and sometimes when things aren't going right with them, or if other things in our lives are affecting our time with horses, it can actually hit us so much harder because, you know, the emotional stress that it can cause is huge.
Yeah. That's interesting you're saying that, because I suppose talking about stuff going on with your horse, people don't understand like how, like, as you said, like emotionally draining it can be, or something happen. Like if something happens to your horse, like it's like like feel horrible, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'll use an example. I've had a client recently. I've just finished working with her. She was a very, very experienced horsewoman, like had horses for 40 years, like very good rider. An incident with her horse towards the end of last year, which, you know, she said quite openly herself, usually it wouldn't have affected her at all, caused her to not ride her horse for 4 months.
Oh wow.
Because of the stress and the anxiety it was causing. And actually, together we figured out that in other areas of her life away from her horse, she feels quite out of control of situations and things like that. Whereas with the horses, she was always the one in control, and she felt that she knew exactly what she was doing and things like that. But that one incident with her horse had made her also feel out of control in that situation, and she just couldn't handle it at all. So, and it was destroying her that she couldn't get on her horse, that she was too scared to, because she felt like she had no reason to feel like that, but she couldn't help it. So yeah, we worked through that, and she is now back on her horse and riding and enjoying it. So that's a really great thing.
That's brilliant to hear as well that she's back. It's also as well, like, it's your kind of one thing she had, wasn't it? Like, that was, and it's gone from you. Like, you don't know what to do, really, do you?
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly where it came from, is that, as I said, that feeling of lack of control suddenly crept into the one place that she felt she had control, and then she just couldn't handle any of it at all.
Yeah. Well, that's completely understandable. Do you find there's normally something else underlying with clients then when they come to you? It's
Yeah,
not just the
absolutely.
horse, like.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd say 90% of the time, the problem isn't actually the horse or the relationship with the horse at all. It's coming from somewhere else in their lives completely. And, as a mindset coach, it's your job to kind of unpick it and unwind everything and try and work out where these feelings are coming from.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you find you get pushback from them when you say maybe it's not the horse, maybe it's something else?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that the session where I say, I think that this feeling is coming from X, Y, or Z, that they will immediately say, no, it's not, want to go back to talking about the horse, etc. But then I usually find it's the next session, like the week later, when they've had time to think about it, where they will say, oh, actually, what you said last week kind of made sense. And then they're open to talking about it. But it is really hard for people to understand, and also to accept that actually it's other things in their lives and maybe other relationships which are causing the tension with the horse.
That's true. Is it ever often that any time is actually the horse is just a lunatic?
Yeah, sometimes.
They do exist from time to time. The majority of them, it's always our fault. So would you work mostly online, or do you work kind of in person as well, or how does that kind of work working with you?
It depends. So, I mean, at the moment, I do a lot of sessions online. However, the lady that I was just speaking about, she was at a yard not too far from me. So actually, we did her sessions face to face, which was really nice actually, because I could then, towards the end of our the block of sessions that we did, I was doing sessions with her on the horse, and we did a couple of sessions of her, with her leading him, and then that was really cool because she could tell me exactly how she was feeling at the time rather than trying to recall it. But yeah, I mean, all the rest of my clients at the moment are online.
Yeah, that's amazing as well, being able to be there with them.
Yeah, it was really cool actually.
Yeah. Do you find when you launched this that it was there was a really big uptake on it, or do you think would it take time for people to kind of go, oh, maybe a coach could help me?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to find that people follow me for a long time before they actually contact me about coaching. I mean, I'm quite lucky at the moment where I do get referrals from people now. I've kind of got to that point where I, will work with one person and they'll recommend a few people to me and things like that. But yeah, I have found that people will follow me for a while as a bit of a silent follower, not really engaged with anything. And sometimes they'll inquire a couple of times before they actually take it up.
Yeah.
Because it is really hard, for anyone. I mean, it was difficult for me to admit that there was a problem that I needed help with, because as human beings, we do like to pretend that everything's okay. And I do think it actually takes strength to say I need help.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, do you think that's why they follow you quietly and don't engage, because it's okay like following it, but if you even commenting on one of your posts is like almost admitting to themselves that there is something.
Yes, yeah, definitely.
So do you have any kind of certain like tools you use with people, or is it really like person to person?
Um, it is quite. It's very person to person. I mean, everyone is a different case, as it were. But I do have certain tools that I find myself using again and again. For example, one's to do with boundary setting, things like that. I talk a lot about internal boundaries and external boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all very well learning to be able to say no to someone, or learning how to not take someone's comments to heart, or to sort of bat them away, but actually how you deal with it internally is still quite difficult. So I have a few tools around that, which I do seem to end up talking about again and again.
Yeah. When it comes to like boundary setting with equestrians, is it like they have problems setting boundaries with the people around them, or setting boundaries when it comes to even their horse?
Mostly with the people around them. I tend to find that a lot of the boundaries that I talk about with equestrian people tends to be unsolicited opinions from people at their yards. That is something that people seem to struggle with quite a lot, and I can understand it. If you're going through, if you're feeling like a lack of confidence with your horse, and then someone's watching you while you ride and they start making suggestions and things like that, and that it can make you feel worse. And that person giving their opinion, it may genuinely be trying to help, but actually if you're in a state of, like I said, having a lack of confidence, hearing someone say, oh, just try this, it's really easy, can be really hard to hear.
Yeah.
And it's just about teaching people ways to deal with stuff like that.
Yeah. I suppose as well, like there can be a lot of people who are just trying to help, but there is a lot of kind of snide ways of saying things in the.
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure we've all, and people who are listening to this, have been on livery yards and things like that, where there can sometimes be a bit of a bitchy undertone and things like that. But it's just learning. It's a bit about like mental toughness and being able to brush it off and things like that. But there are ways that you can train yourself to not be bothered and to sort of let things slide.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It does take time, I think, with that.
Yeah.
Um, why do you think that it's mostly like women that come to you?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's because the things I post, attract women more. But I do think that when it comes to, mindset problems and confidence problems and things like that, I think that women are better at recognizing it within themselves. But also I do think women are more comfortable with asking for help with stuff like that.
Yeah, I get you. Yeah. Men, it's kind of grin and bear it and get on with it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that's changing. Like, don't get me wrong. But I do think that women are slightly ahead in that process.
Yeah, I think as well, I suppose it was really highlighted um in January with the hate campaign as well, like that was, they're even saying like the research they got on it, they could only get it on jockeys and that will be predominantly males, but at least they're admitting they've had some issues.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it was it was strange. So I ran the Stress Effects Us All campaign for Equitas.
Mm-hmm.
And I reached out to a couple of like riding mental health charities and things like that, and asked if there would be any sort of ambassadors or anything that would be interested in helping. And it was quite surprising that they they didn't, don't get me wrong, they didn't speak to their ambassadors and stuff, but they said that the ambassadors that work for them, and this wasn't just from one charity, it was from a couple, said that actually people at a high level are still unlikely to come out and admit that they're affected by stress or affected by mental health, because they worry about the repercussions in being selected for teams and things like that, which I think is a real shame.
That is, yeah. And
so yeah, but then things are changing. I don't know if you saw that when badminton were on, riders' minds did very heavily advertise the fact that they had a safe space for people to go and speak if they needed to. And again, they obviously didn't publicize who spoke to them, but they were there to speak to competitors and members of the public. So again, I do think things are changing.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I'll be honest, I didn't even know there was mental health charities for horse riders. And like I was involved with the Hay campaign part, like, on the grassroots Gazette side. But yeah, like there was I suppose it was just the governing bodies they all got onto. I didn't even hear anything about mental health charities. Are they all UK based, or any of them, do you know, are they both?
No, there is one in Ireland, the Irish Equestrian Mental Health Project.
Okay.
I think they are growing. The main one over here is Riders' Minds. They're probably the most well known over here, but there are a few more as well.
Yeah, it's great to hear, like, because I suppose, I don't know if you find this, but I feel like our sport kind of, like, even all the disciplines of it kind of fly under the radar a little bit. People don't really understand it, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest bugbear with equestrian sport is that we seem to be so far behind any other sport in the world. If you look at if you take equestrianism as an Olympic sport, you look at how much technology and everything goes into, as they say, runners, Olympic sprinters. Look at things in terms of biomechanics and stuff like that. And I know that it's coming. I know that it's growing in our sport, and we are using it, but we're so far behind. Like, those other sports have been using that sort of technology for years and years.
Yeah, that's like I've been banging on about this for ages. That's what I like to is I train horse riders. I feel like they want to put all that effort into the horse, but they're forgetting, like, it's the team.
Yeah, of course.
So they need to do the work on themselves as well, like even with mindset, with like fitness and stuff like that, because there's no point having the best horse in the world if you can't, like, if you can't ride it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. And you still get that, like, I don't know, that, I mean, it's, whether it's right or wrong, but that, traditional view of like an eventer who, if they're at a 3-day event, spend like the 2 nights pissed and get off and ride with a hangover. But you'd see no other athlete doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And don't get me wrong, I obviously know that there are, riders that don't do that, but there are definitely riders that do.
Yeah, I do remember, well, at least the grooms were anyway, like when Tats used to be on, they'd be basically on a piss up the whole weekend and then getting the horses out in the morning.
Yeah, exactly. And I just don't think you see that in other high level sports.
Yeah, that's true. Like, can you imagine seeing, like, how, I don't want to say Ronaldo because I don't like him, but say him. Can you imagine him like out in the piss the night before a game?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's mad. But and that, like I say, that is one of my biggest bugbears. It's just generally the modernization of our sport.
Yeah, that's definitely a big thing. Like, even not like going into that technology, but like I find, I don't know if I'd say it's better over in the UK, but like a lot of places over here, like yards don't even have websites, or they have a page, it's just a call, there's like, I think one of the most modern places nearby, it's like they actually have electric timers for the competitions. I'm like, oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And I also think that, as an industry that has employees, we're very, very behind other industries. So, you look at like corporate industries, like, I'm from a corporate background. I've worked for a very large German car company for 11 years. And, we had, like, on the subject of mental health, like, we have mental health support for employees. But, someone who works at a yard, that's their full-time job, but they have nothing like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And I really think the industry needs to change.
Yeah, I agree. The thing is, well, a lot of the people who are working on these, they're not in like proper contracts or anything. It's, under the table kind of stuff. And
Oh yeah, definitely. And it is, and it still all goes on. I mean, I at the moment, like, I do a bit of freelancing at yards and stuff as well, just when things are quiet. And the amount of times that, I give them my rate and they go, oh, well, we only pay £10 an hour. I'm like, well, that's below minimum wage for my age, so I can't work for that. And it's just a widely accepted thing that that's like an okay rate to pay a groom, and I just don't agree.
yeah, no, similar. Like I did over the pandemic, I did a little bit of work up in the yard and like once a week kind of thing, so I was free. And originally they were like, yeah, so 40 quid for the day, like 8 to 5 or something. I was like, no.
Yeah.
Because I'm driving up as well. It takes me 40 minutes to drive up. Like,
Yeah.
because I'm 30, I'm not.
Yeah, I know. And that's why, I know you mentioned my new business at the start, but that's one of the reasons why I've started First Hurdle, is to provide mental health support and a mental health first aid system for equestrian businesses, so that their employees can have that support and, can have someone to speak to if they need to. Because, as we said at the start, horses are very stressful and, bring a lot of emotions. And I think, and people that look after them have a lot of responsibility, and sometimes things don't go right and they need someone to speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a bit more like about the first hurdle. Where did the idea of it come from?
Well, it actually came from a podcast that I recorded with Shane from Equitas and Grassroots, back in January for the Hay campaign.
Yeah.
Literally where it came from. We were chatting about the difference of with the equine industry to corporate industries, and I was talking about how when I was at work we had a mental health first aid system, so if you were stressing, you needed someone to speak to, there was always someone there. And I said in my podcast, I was like, well, there was absolutely, there's nothing like that for the equestrian industry. And then I was like, hang on,
Light bulb.
I can do that. So yeah, I've worked on getting my qualifications and everything, and I have just launched. So the idea, I mean, it's twofold, the business. So the main idea of it is that business owners would subscribe to my services so that I can look after the mental health of their employees. And that would be through a mental health first aid hotline, so, or a WhatsApp service as well I've got, so that, they've always got someone there to speak to if anything comes up. And also online, there are like training modules and things like that. So if someone, as we were talking about before, if one of their employees is having trouble with boundary setting, they can go on there and there's a resource for it so they can get the information. Part of the service as well is that initially I do a mental health vetting of the business. So just like you'd have a horse vetted to make sure it's fit for purpose, do a vetting of the business just to make sure it's mentally fit, and just find out where the business is doing well, where it could improve. So that's done through a confidential questionnaire that goes to with all the employees, asks them a lot of questions. There's a lot of mindset ones in there, but also a lot of just how the business works and whether they feel that they're getting everything they need. And from that, I can create a report and go back to the business owner and say, look, this is where people are happy, but actually maybe this is where you need to look at changing to keep your staff engaged and keep them dedicated.
Yeah,
and
that
then
makes
kind of
sense.
come up and put together a plan with the business owner to make sure that their staff are happy. Because also there's been a lot of stuff in the press at the moment about the staffing crisis within the equestrian industry, and we need to sort of start questioning why all our good staff are leaving the industry. Maybe this is part of it.
Yeah, that's true. And that's something I'm interested in because, like, as you're saying, like, they can be a little bit, I suppose, so staff aren't necessarily looked after as well as they should in a lot of the businesses. Would
Mm-hmm.
they be reluctant to get an evaluation because it'll show up what they actually have to do for the staff?
Yeah, and I mean that's one of the things that I'm sort of coming up against, is that I don't think at the moment business owners are ready to accept that maybe there's a problem.
Yeah.
Someone who runs a yard, or something like that, I don't know. I don't know if you do, but I see a lot of comments on Facebook. Like, I'm part of a few Facebook groups for like horsey staff and things around the area. And I actually saw one post a few weeks ago, where someone was saying that they're no longer gonna employ anyone from the snowflake generation who don't want to do any hard work and things like that. And I just made me so angry, because I don't think it's anything to do with the snowflake generation. However, I do think that these days people are now more aware of what they're entitled to in terms of care as an employee.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. A lot of people moved and were like in all, like, you'll find a lot of them, especially the lower paid ones, are not getting, they can't, there's a staff shortage in cafes, there's staff shortage and, like, all these things. And it's not that people don't want to, but they know they don't have to anymore.
Yeah, and it's, and like I say, I don't think it's anything to do with not wanting to work,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's to do with wanting to be appreciated for the work that they do. And I think that's a massive part of it. I've got a few friends who I've known for years that have worked on yards, and or been freelancers and things like that. And so many of them are choosing to leave and get like a normal job now because they're sick of being treated the way that they're treated.
Yeah,
And I
and
think that's such a shame. And, these are girls in their 30s, these are not young girls. These
mhm.
are older, responsible women who can do a very, very good job and who can run a yard like with their eyes closed, but they're not being appreciated for what they're doing. So they don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And it's like with the way things are now as well, like you can go get a normal job, you can work from home
Mm.
and
Yeah,
get,
exactly.
like,
Yeah,
if you're going,
exactly.
it's such a grueling job, like working in yards. It's
Mm.
it's hard. Like there's nothing easy about it.
No,
Um,
no, I know. And and like I say, I just think it's a shame that the generation of grooms and things that are out there at the moment, that they're waking up to actually what they deserve and what benefits they should be getting, and things like that. But it's a shame that the employers are not waking up to the same thing.
I suppose the employers are probably like, well, we had to do that, so you have to do it now. It's kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it?
Exactly. That is exactly what it comes down to. It comes down to when I was younger, I worked as a groom and this is what we went through. However, you look at corporate jobs, someone who did, who's doing that job now compared to someone who was doing that job 20 years ago, that situation was very different as well. However, that industry has moved forwards and has made changes.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Do you
Hmm.
think there's a reluctancy to make any type of change in the equestrian industry?
I don't know. I think that the equestrian industry as a whole is very, very guilty of saying, well, we've always done it like this and it's worked, so we'll carry on doing it.
Mm,
I think now there are changes coming to the way that we look after and train and feed our horses, but it's taken so long to happen. The research has been out there for years and years, but people don't want to change anything. And it's only now that they're starting to. So I do think that these changes to the way that staff are treated will come about, but I don't know if it's going to happen too late.
yeah, I get you. I suppose the things, well, like you're saying, like all the how feeding and stuff like that, it's always the horse first, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And eventually they get to the people, because even the people who are working in this, like, or like, or I find as well, which I find it hardest to explain to people, is like you are as important as your horse.
Hmm.
And I feel equestrians or people who work in the industry, it's all about them. They never think about themselves.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. I completely agree. But if I flip that around, like for me, like my horse is obviously my world, and I would do anything for him. But if I was leaving him in someone else's care, I would be as nice as I could to that person to make sure that they looked after my horse properly. I wouldn't, we're not going to take advantage of them. I'm not going to, do anything to upset them, because I want to make sure my horse is looked after properly. So why does that feeling not come across the whole industry?
That's a really, really good point.
If you want the horses to be looked after at the absolute top level, then the staff who are looking after them need to be treated the same.
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good point.
Yeah, and that's that. I might be wrong, but that is just how I feel about it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I've kind of seen this before, even when I worked in a gym that was in a hotel, and it
Hmm.
was all about make sure everyone's great, blah, 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 you're barely getting paid minimum wage, everything has to be perfect. You're like, well, if you want us to treat these people like this, maybe you should treat us a little bit better.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same with the horses. And also the thing is that staff who are overworked, stressed, are made to feel like they're not doing a good job, are not going to look after the horses to the best of their ability because they can't.
And it can also become dangerous as well for
Yeah,
them and the horses. Like something could go wrong because you're not paying attention because you're knackered and
yeah,
stressed.
exactly. And also, another thing I was talking to someone about the other day was the fact that there is a rise now of like freelance grooms, which
Right.
is great. You can, if you need someone to cover, like there are freelance grooms available, that's fine. However, people are using freelancers more and more because these people are leaving their employed jobs to become freelancers because they've realized they can make more money. And actually, if they're taken on by a yard that they're not being treated properly at, they can just go and find something else. But how complicated is it for a yard owner to keep having to retrain people every time they come in about the horse's specific needs? Would it not be better to have an employed team who are happy, dedicated, want to stay and want to be there, who already know what the horses need, if there are any special requirements and things like that, so that the yard owner can have a stress-free life?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And also, you're saying like they get paid more money to come into a yard, so they'll pay extra money to get someone to come in for a week
Yeah, exactly.
versus just having someone there full time.
Yeah, and we're not a lot of the time we're not talking a huge amount of money. We're talking maybe a couple of pounds an hour more.
Mm.
You know, I think sometimes that's all these people really need.
Yeah,
But
no,
I mean, I'm not, my business isn't there to talk about money and payment and stuff. Mine is there to talk about like mental health support. But money comes into it because cost of living crisis is affecting every single person at the moment.
yeah,
So that is a factor that does stress people out.
yeah, and that's true. Like money is a big thing that causes mental health issues. So it is something that has to be touched on as well. Like, and to admit that that's the way it is.
Yeah, yeah,
Now,
absolutely.
have you any like good tips for people who are struggling right now with their riding confidence wise, or even if mental health around the horses or
I mean, I'd say find someone to speak to. It does take a lot to be able to speak to someone and say, I'm
Mhm.
struggling. However, I can guarantee that as soon as you do, a weight will feel like it's been lifted. And
Mm.
if you can't speak to your employer, or you feel like you can't speak to your friends or family, like find a professional. Um, you know, I will always I will always happily have a chat with someone over, DM or even on the phone if someone needs it, and, not tie them into a group of sessions and stuff. If someone really needs my help, then I will give it.
Yeah, well, it shows you're in the right space, and it's something you actually.
Yeah, no, I just want people to be able to get the help that they need. That's all I want.
Yeah, it's amazing. I still think it's so cool as well that like you are there as a specific one for horse riders, because like you're saying with your therapist, like it can be so hard to get people who understand unless they're involved with horses. I think people just don't get it, do they?
No, they don't.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's pretty much everything I have to ask you. Though I do have one other thing that I ask everybody at the end of podcasts, and that is, what is the best piece of advice that you've ever been given?
What is the best bit of advice I've ever been given?
You can pick 3 if you need to. I love doing this one.
No, I do have one. So the best piece of advice that I have been given in recent times, I would say, because I can't think back that far, is when I was having a conversation with my mum about stress in general, being stressed and everything. And the best bit of advice she gave me was to allocate time during the day to stress about that thing. So only allow myself half an hour in the day to stress about that thing that was stressing me out. But apart from that, put it out of my mind. But during that half hour, only think about that one thing. And
That's
it's
brilliant.
so useful, because actually I'm not very good at compartmentalizing. So if I've got something on my mind, it's literally on my mind the whole time, and I stress and then I get anxious. But actually putting time aside a day to specifically worry about that thing just completely frees up your mind. It's unbelievable. It's like, it just makes such a difference.
I really like that. I must actually write that down and remember to do that, because I'm like that. I'm always like, this is on my head all day, but I'm like,
Yeah.
right, sit down and panic about something for an hour, half an hour, and then go on my day.
And actually, when you give that thing allocated time, when you're not trying to do anything else, you actually start to work it out a lot quicker.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So whereas like if you're going about your normal daily activities, but you're still stressing about something, you're not really working it out. You're just stressing. Whereas if you actually sit down, purposely stress about it, you can actually then to start make sense of it and work it out properly.
Yeah, I suppose it makes sense. Like, you're not just like, I suppose you can get into a state of overwhelm, but if you look at it straight, you can go, oh, actually, I could just do this, this, and this, and then it'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant. I really like that one. So I just want to say thanks for joining us today, Erin. Can you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, so I am on Instagram. So you can find me at Ride Strong Coaching, or my new page, which is at first.hurdle.
Yes, cool, brilliant. And is that just you just on Instagram? Is it?
So First Hurdle does have a website as well, which is first-hurdle.com.
Oh, deadly, brilliant, cool. And as ever, people, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. It's at Strong the Saddle _ on Instagram, but no underscore on TikTok. Someone on Instagram beat me to Strong the Saddle. And then my website's www.chrissyhawkins.com. So just want to say thanks again for joining us today. It was such a good talk.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I really do appreciate everybody who listens to this podcast. So if you please could help me with the algorithm and leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And even, if you want to reach out and suggest topics for me, I'd be delighted to hear from you. Drop me a DM on Instagram or TikTok. And thanks again for listening.